almost a 20-year period starting in 1999. I'm sorry, a 10-year period, 99 to 2014. Okay. The other thing you'll see is those total need numbers are broken down into these income categories. Again, that's according to ABAG's methodology that is blessed by the state. And so working backwards, you have need numbers for above moderate, which is basically 120 or 121 and above. The moderate income category is, now these are income percentages based on a regional, where the community stands relative to the region, or these are regional numbers applied to your specific housing allocation. So the moderate income, in terms of income, is 80% of median up to 120%. Low is 50 to 80 basically, and then very low is everything under 50. And then there's a new category that's been developed in recent years, which is extremely low, which is 30%. Now,
are we allowed to ask questions as part of this presentation, or are we more listening?
Why don't we hold the why don't we take breaks during the presentation and take questions at that point? I thank you for asking the question.
so again, you're working with two sets of projections that have rolled up into a combined set of need numbers, and those are allocated according to these income groups. Now, in terms, what is that? What's the translation here in Sausalito? You'll see the numbers here in terms of a one-person household and a two-person household. The moderate category for a two-person household goes up to $97,500, and you can see that the very low income category for a two-person household is $42,750. So that's annual income. And if you do the translation, that means that what you see on the right, you'll see what that means in terms of what a person or a household should be spending on housing. Housing, that would be rent, including utilities. So, and again, the moderate category, which goes up to 120% of median income, is basically $2,500 a month for rent or housing payment. So that's how the numbers break down. There's a basic assumption that the state makes relative to how you get to affordable housing, and their theory, and this is not demonstrated in every environment, is the higher the density, the more affordable the housing is likely to be. Now, we know that that's not necessarily true, but the state actually assigns a target or a minimum threshold density to every community in California. There are three brackets: 10 units per acre, 20 units per acre, and 38 units per acre. You fall into the 20 units per acre category. That's the threshold for affordable housing. I mean, lower income housing should be developed or permitted at a density of 20 units per acre. I want to make sure that everybody understands that in these housing element requirements, particularly relative to providing adequate sites, the requirement is not that you build affordable housing. The requirement is that you set the table for the possibility of someone developing affordable housing. So you need to create the conditions where it's possible for someone to do it, but you don't have an obligation to actually build it. Okay? I want to make sure that everybody really understands that. And if you look at this next graphic, you'll see what these different income levels and density standards look like, and these come from just our photo library, but again, what you see is according to the theory, density equals affordability, and the more dense you are, the more affordable your property is. So we've created this graphic that shows above moderate income housing at very low density, and here in this case, multifamily at 29 units per acre will theoretically reach the target income group for, and that's that standard of 50% or less of median income. And again, I said that density does not necessarily mean affordable development, because if that were true, San Francisco would be one of the most affordable communities in the country, and actually Sausalito would be as well. So you're already very dense, so if density means affordability, theoretically, you're living in a very affordable community, but we know that's not the case. We've taken this one step further and brought it down to the circumstances of Sausalito. And so in terms of above moderate income housing, that need is basically going to be met by single family homes. In the case of moderate income housing, again, that's that middle range, that need is going to be met primarily through accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, small multifamily, and liveaboards. Okay? This is a little, we're oversimplifying, but that's sort of to give you an idea of what all this means. And then lower income, that need would be met by larger multifamily housing, accessory dwellings, and liveaboards. Again, we're talking sort of in generalities. You're going to find those types of housing related to these income groups. Now, in terms of this regional housing needs allocation, it basically informs your housing element programs and policies in two ways. First, ensuring adequate sites. So again, this has to do with setting the table. Can a person come in, if they have unlimited resources, and build housing at these densities, and can they build affordable housing? Let's say if they're some kind of nonprofit, just as an example. Can they come in and build at these densities and build affordable housing? And that's really what the adequate sites test is about. But again, these you have to relate all that to the housing types relative to the incomes. The other way this RHNA number informs your housing element is that it turns into programs perhaps for regulatory incentives or removal of constraints and providing funding. So adequate sites, removing constraints, those are sort of the two legs for the development of your housing element, and that's the way the RHNA informs that. The traditional approach to dealing with these RHNA numbers is to take those numbers and look at what's been built since the beginning of the projection period. In your case, we have to go back one additional period that starts in 1999, and we go through an inventory all the development that's occurred or been approved and do the subtraction, saying, well, we don't need to be concerned about those numbers because those units have already been built or entitled. The second thing we typically do is to look at the existing general plan, existing zoning, and look at the sites that are either vacant or underutilized, and just take the existing density standards and do the math and see if we can reach those RHNA numbers by income category. And to the extent that we can, terrific. We're basically home free. We can get a certified element. That's not going to be such a challenge, but that's rarely the case. And if you go through and do the math, you'll see that basically you've got a remaining total need for this, again, this 14 to 15-year period of 189 units. That's your total need, and it's broken down into those income categories: very low 59, low 47, moderate 83, and you've already taken care of the above moderate classification. So that's where you stand. Those are really the numbers you need to be focusing on as we talk about new strategies for closing the gap. Finally, we need to mention that there are some consequences for failure to get a certified element. Your whole general plan is inadequate technically if you don't have an adequate housing element. In litigation, theoretically, you could have your land use authority or constrained, at the very least, by the court saying, until you fix the problem, you can't issue certain kinds of permits. You know, in litigation, there's a good chance you're going to have to pay legal fees. Well, first your own legal fees, but including the plaintiff's fees. Then there's this extra penalty. This is the way that the numbers accumulate over the years if you don't get a housing element certified by HCD, and so that's what's happened to you already. Then that would happen again if you didn't get a certified element. And then finally, you may be ineligible for certain state funding, like funding through the block grant program, the home, or the infill incentive grant program. So that sets the stage for the rest of our presentation, and we're going to be focusing on strategies from this point on.
I'd like to open up for a moment for questions on what Larry presented, the RENA process. Yes.
First question. I've lived here a long while. Where does Marin City fit into all this stuff? We're paid for all of their stuff. Why don't we get counted for all of their units? Two, isn't, if I'm not mistaken, the Gate 5 is outside the city limits. Are they planning on then liveaboards being along the waterfront, or are we planning, is that within the city limits that we're going to use Gate 5?
We only have, Sausalito's requirement is only to plan for housing within the city
Right, so
limits.
you're-
Marin City is outside the city limits, as is the area.
Then I just see a
Point.
power play up here. Okay. I know that I see 12 units or 17 for Belvedere and 189 for Sausalito.
Well, the county, Marin City and Waldo Point being in unincorporated county
Okay.
territory is the county's responsibility.
Okay, what you're saying is that then we're talking about these units, putting more liveaboards in along the waterfront of Sausalito from, say, the old Nautilus down through till we get to Sausalito, Maine. You're talking about that?
We're going to be talking about the strategies in the next part of the presentation.
Your question's timely, but and we'll make sure to address that issue as part of that.
We'll be talking about liveaboards.
That's, your question is, we're not quite there in the presentation yet.
No. I mean, in other words, I want to know what we're talking about in Sausalito so we can all have an idea.
Only the city limits.
So we're talking about from the old Nautilus, they changed the name, Bridgeway, so down the waterfront, putting more liveaboards where they had a big meeting years before to stop that, and they guaranteed they'd never have any. We now have Rose's Harbor and some more since that time, and you're telling me now that this is where you're talking about putting liveaboard. I'm just want to clarify.
It's one of the options that we're looking at.
Okay, so that's where we're talking about. That's all I want to know.
So your
Gotcha.
question's timely.
Gotcha, that's all I want to
Stan,
know.
did you have a question?
Well, I did, it was on about slide 10. And so if I map slide 9 and slide 10, we need 372 units. As you pointed out, we already knocked that down to about, 189. So if we need to have some breakdown between extremely low, very low, low and moderate income, does that mean that, for example, we would need 47